so I had a friend whose brother had got tattoos all over their face, and he was like, "What are you doing? You know, now you're gonna be unemployed." And it was like, "Don't you know? The point is not that I'm unemployed. The point is to be unemployable." and and so that was my version of making sure I don't get a bank job. Is I put all this stuff into it, and either it was gonna happen or everything was gonna go bust. You know.
Hey, young blood, let me give you a tip. Use your white voice.
Man, I ain't got no white voice.
Oh, come on, you know what I mean. You have a white voice in there.
As far as it being set in Oakland, I mean, I think like maybe all my songs are set in Oakland. I think, you know, like it's just where I know I live there and I've grown up there. But when I wrote this thing, I took the journey with Cassius. I knew a few things that I wanted it to do. But I think the strike was always something that was gonna be in the movie no matter what. But I didn't want it to just be about that, you know? And so I kind of set him on his way. In every scene I was like going with him and needed him to go through a certain emotional journey, while I wanted to also take the viewer on a ride that simulated what it feels like when you discover new ideas. You know, and I didn't want to just say, look at him finding out these new ideas. And I wanted the viewer to have feelings that were similar to what he was feeling. It depends on what part you're talking about. We had 61 locations in the movie that we shot in 28 days.
Wow.
And you did a lot of night shoots also.
Yeah, we had a lot of split days and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so honestly, I guess it was because I was thinking about it the other day that if I knew how crazy that was, then I would have, you know, cut down the location. I would have been like, let's make this production design simpler. Let's, you know, do. Luckily, I didn't, because I think those are the things that give the movie its character. I knew that I wanted it to be more complicated than an indie film would normally be. I wanted it to have more scale than an indie film would normally be, because although parameters are good for creativity, often like indie films have the same financial parameters and use the same ways around them that as each other. So, you know, what is an exciting movie becomes a movie where two people are on a couch breaking up. They see each other later at a bar, and then they walk away from each other again in the middle of the street, you know? And so we end up, even though independent has the connotation of being more free, you know, we talk about that, like how independent films do what Hollywood films don't. And they do some things that Hollywood films don't, but they also have their own set of rules, and that come from sometimes producers of indie films having cookie cutter ways of getting the thing done for the budget. So us being in Oakland allowed us to get certain, because I know so many people there, allowed us to get certain locations for free, allowed us to get like even sometimes when people have the budget to pay extras to show up for a crowd scene, they can't get that many people to come out. but you know, in the Bay Area I can. And you know, it's so I wanted those things to be there. So as far as harder to, there were certain things that were harder, like how many hours we were going to have to shoot in order to do it, you know. But I mean, I'm used to living my life tired, and you know, so that part wasn't hard. But yeah, how, you know, how we had to cut down. Luckily, we had great actors, because sometimes we didn't have time to get, like, if we would have really needed to keep going and get the right take, we would have suffered from what also indie films sometimes suffer from, is bad performances. That sometimes has to do with the environment that they're shooting it and the situations. So I don't, you know, we didn't have to deal with any bad performances. Well, by the time I met with Lakeith, he was already interested. I had been through the Sundance Labs. The thing had already gotten a lot, you know, we had drummed up a lot of buzz around it. People didn't necessarily believe that I was going to be able to get it funded, but yeah, there were things happening. But the main thing I would say is, you know, for me, I know a lot of what I do is to take big ideas and put them down in a small bite-sized portions. And so what I would start out with is saying, so this is an absurdist dark comedy with magical realism and science fiction inspired by the world of telemarketing. It's called Sorry to Bother You. People are already ready to hear more at that point. And for Lakeith, I mean, I'm sure there was a certain amount of allure in the fact that you will be playing the lead, you know. Mm-hmm. But it also, and by the time I met with him, he had already read the script, so I didn't have to, like, he knew what it was. I think the dynamic role that it was attracted people to it. I mean, I needed him to go to, I needed him to see who he was. I didn't, you know, so there's a performance that happens in the movie, you know, there's a performance piece that Cassius does, you know what I'm talking about. And then as I was writing, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is the thing that kind of puts him, puts everything into perspective for him. But then I was like, well, he's already been doing all this other crazy stuff. Why would that happen? So I needed there to be another level. I needed there to be something that showed him who he was in the world. And I remember having the idea, and I was like, you know, and that's, and yeah, so I went there with him. David Cross and Patton Oswalt were the first ones to jump on board. And that only happened because I had David Cross's email from 2002. It was probably like Hotmail or something like that. and I emailed him saying, hey, I have this script. Would you mind reading it? Blah, blah, blah. obviously it must have forwarded to his new one, and he hit me back and he was like, hey, yeah, just send it to my house in New York. And so I sent it, and now he admits that he had no intention of ever reading it. But it happened to be that it got there when he was out of town and his assistant was house sitting. And his assistant was bored when the thing came through and read the script and was like, you have to read this. And then I got him on board, Patton Oswalt, and yeah, I think everyone was attracted to the script and to the parts that they were playing, which were very different than parts that they normally would play, you know, and everyone saw a challenge in it, you know, so and they yeah, it was amazing to see people work together. Often I would just not yell cut because I was so happy like that this world I created was happening. I just like, and they would go, they're the kind of actors that they'll just keep going in the scene, and you know, sometimes the story will change. I mean, we wouldn't use that, but you know, like they're not stopping unless you tell them to cut, and they'll just keep going with something. They won't break character. And one of the times that we did that we did use is like there's the champagne popping, which is also in the trailer. So you know, like that, I just left them in the office. Like it was supposed to end, I think, I don't forget where it's supposed to end, but then they just started messing with the props, and that's why she's like, because we didn't have any cups, you know. And so he, you know, and you know, he's like drinks it from the bottle, and there's just these moments that happen that ended up really just expressing what needed to be said right there. Yeah, so they were all great actors. Kate Berlant and Robert Longstreet. Kate Berlant plays Diana Debauchery, and Robert Longstreet plays Langston. Michael X. Summers plays Johnny. These are all just great folks. Working with Army, he's crazy. Like you could be like, Army, okay, this time say it like you got a calculator in your pocket. And he'll make an adjustment, and he'll do, you know, he's thinking about whatever that would be. And there's a change in what he said that you can feel. Yeah, he's very adjustable in that. Lakeith is someone who is not just gonna show you the emotion that you need to feel to move the story along. It's not like he's supposed to get scared right here, he's supposed to get mad right here. That's not how he works, which is great. He's reacting off what's happening around him, and which causes some choices that actors normally wouldn't make. If you want him to do a certain thing, you better give him that thing that would cause him to do that, you know. You know, so we got such a realistic performance, which was needed with all the craziness going on. Yeah, so, and Tessa, him reacting with Tessa is like, Tessa's somebody who has known her lines maybe for a couple weeks before or whatever. Lakeith purposely doesn't learn his line, like he knows the story, knows the whole thing. He doesn't learn his lines until the day of, and that way, as he's saying the lines, they feel new, like they're just being thought up right then. I also wasn't clear what I was gonna do with them exactly.
Okay.
So I knew they were gonna do the voices, but I think I wasn't sure which one Patton was gonna do and which one David was gonna do. And David came in first, and I was just thinking, like, you know, I needed the whitest sounding voice. And I know I had two of the whitest sounding voices in the world, but it was funny because then when Patton came in the next day, I informed him, like, you're doing Mr., which is just Omari's character, which is Mr. in a blank space. And he was like, first he was a little bit like, really, why? You know, like he didn't know. Or he didn't say why, but he was like, really? Like he didn't know. He's like, and I said, well, here's the thing, is I needed Cassius's white voice to be the whitest voice there is. And listening to both of you, I realized that David Cross has a much whiter voice than yours. And he was like, yeah, that is true. So he was, yeah. So it was, and I think that Patton's, like the shape of Patton's voice, like the sound wave, fit Omari's a little bit better to like the pompousness of how what Patton can get to. Yeah. It's hard to predict. I hope it's going to inspire more people to be making films, to be creating things in ways that they are not normally used to creating. I think that obviously all the people you name are going to, including me, are going to keep making new things. You know, I'm definitely writing other stuff right now, and have people interested in making it. So I think you're going to be seeing a lot more. Hopefully, I think there's a new movement in film, a new black film movement. Hopefully, a new radical film movement. I think there's a lot of things that are coming that actually reflect what's happening in the world right now. Well, so the Coup did the soundtrack, which is all the stuff that comes in diegetically, club and the car, you know, all that sort of stuff. And Tune Yards did the score. So as early as like early 2015, I was working with Meryl on the score. So definitely as I was revising things, I knew because she was already making stuff. And when I was in the labs, you know, I actually shot with some of the pieces that ended up being in the movie, because, you know, some of what ended up being in the movie were her first demos after we, you know, I was like, I need something like Suspiria, you know, and that was the, you know, stuff that came out. And so that was going on. While I wrote the film, interestingly enough, something that, you know, because I needed like scores and I needed something that could loop and I needed something like exciting, I was listening to the Mark Mothersbaugh Rushmore soundtrack. But just like mainly like for energy and feel. But that was for a certain part of it. But I knew that during the initial writing of it, I knew that it needed to go somewhere else that then like what score. And I think Meryl came through with flying colors because the score is not like, oh, this is the shocking part. Now here's the high violin that just goes, you know, that sort of thing. Because, you know, often if you're like, hey, we just shot this movie, I hear you're a composer, can you get something for me in the couple months while we are editing this? It's gonna sound like that. Or what people do is they use pieces from other movies, and then the composer is making something that sounds like those other movies, and then also because that's what they're used to composing on, are those same instruments, and we didn't do that. So yeah, I knew that it had to be something with some other kind of feel to it than normal.
Hey, young blood, let me give you a tip. Use your white voice.
Man, I ain't got no white voice.
Oh, come on, you know what I mean. You have a white voice in there, you can use it. It's like when you're pulled over by the police.
Oh, no, I just use my regular voice when that happens. I just say, back the fuck up off the car and don't nobody get
All
out.
right, man, I'm just trying to give you some game. You want to make some money here? Then read the script with a white voice.
People say I talk with a white voice anyway, so why ain't it helping me out?
Well, you don't talk white enough. I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife. I'm talking about the real deal, like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer, this is Langston from Regal View. I didn't catch you at the wrong time, did I?